You participated in the Marketing Masterclass program, and we were hoping that the participants would, end with creating their own marketing strategy. But why don't we start with learning a little bit more about what your marketing strategy was like before the program?
Sure. Well, when I began at MASC, the communications director was actually a new role. So they'd had people doing communications type things before I joined. They would send out newsletters and do social media posts, but they didn't have a single person with a focus on that aspect of the organization. So when I was invited to join the team, the purpose was to really get MASC out there in a big way. And we saw potential for this, one, because we've been around for 30 years and we can sort of, call ourselves established, but we're also constantly trying to renew ourselves and get more into the public eye. And then secondly, because of the pandemic, we started doing virtual programming, which meant that while that is limiting in certain ways, because that in-person aspect is really, really wonderful in terms of creating a relationship between the artists and the people they work with, the virtual programming allowed us to broaden our scope to offer arts programs all across Canada. So suddenly we had the opportunity to do workshops in the Yukon or in the East Coast or West Coast or wherever. So it gave our artists a lot of new opportunities that weren't there before. And now that, we're starting to go back into classrooms, we're finding this hybrid model where we offer both in-person programming and virtual programming, and trying to figure out how that's going to develop in the future. So really a lot of our marketing was kind of focused on reaching new people and introducing MASC as both an established organization, but also one that's very knowledgeable about the changing times. And I think this is very important right now because MASC has always been focused on diversity even from 30 years ago. Like, I think nowadays that's kind of a very common thing, but from the beginning, MASC was always focused on having diverse artists from all different cultural backgrounds, from different life experiences. We have artists on the roster who are new immigrants, who are Indigenous peoples, who are LGBTQ or have disabilities. All of these things, right, are very important to us to show representation so that the people that we're presenting to, and, as you know, in schools, you see a wide range of children from different places and different backgrounds. We wanted them to be able to see themselves in our artists. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important for us to have a really diverse range. And also for the artists themselves to try and showcase and highlight people from diverse cultures. And so so I feel like that's something that we're able to offer to folks who maybe in certain, for example, rural communities, they might not have a very diverse population, but would like to be able to learn more from other cultures. So we can offer that. Or people who might feel kind of isolated in those communities because they don't fit in with the other people they see around them. We give them sort of a connection that way. So there's been a lot of great opportunities for that. And I think that in terms of our marketing, we wanted to be able to give people choice, and we wanted to offer them quality because all of our artists audition and have to sort of follow a certain protocol to be accepted as MASC artists. So there's a certain degree of reassurance in that. And then, there goes the trimming. Can you hear that?
No.
Cool. And then also just to keep our artists working, during the pandemic, a lot of artists, suddenly all their gigs dried up. They weren't able to go on tour anymore. They weren't able to do the same projects they were planning to do. But because we were able to offer this virtual programming, we kept them employed and working throughout the pandemic. And some of them, got more work than they would have otherwise because they were able to do things virtually. So it's kind of nice that, while I know a lot of organizations struggled during the pandemic, we were able to be creative thanks to the people we work with and all the artists and thrive despite everything.
Do you think that one of your marketing challenges was reaching a new audience during the pandemic? And can you tell us a little bit more about if you faced any other kinds of challenges?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that one of the challenges was demonstrating that our virtual programs are worthwhile, because people can have a certain idea about virtual programs being boring or not engaging or any number of things that don't have the same energy as in-person programming. But I think anybody who's experienced a program with a MASC artist can say, you know, while it wasn't the same as having them in person, it did bring the artists were still able to maintain that level of engagement. They were able to communicate their ideas. They were able to get the kids working on something. So we were still able to have the same kind of impact that we've had in the past. But to demonstrate that is difficult without actually getting a booking. So what we did was we worked a lot with the artists to create promotional videos. So over the summer of 2020, well, starting then and continuing onwards, because we brought in new artists since, we've created 1-minute videos with the artists where they can show clips of what they've been working on, interviews with them, showing them interacting with the children or with the seniors, depending on the age group they're working with. And I think that really helps to show sort of what we're capable of. We also created these videos on demand, so that if there is a type of performance or workshop that required a lot of planning or technical aspects or just sort of quality in terms of sound or lighting or anything like that, we have a group, for example, called B-Boyism Dance Company. And if you were going to have them on for like a Zoom meeting, it's kind of hard to capture like all 5 members doing their very intricate dance moves, and it would be kind of a bit flat, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we created these very like pre-recorded yet interactive videos where you could see like high quality performance of them dancing, cameras coming from different angles, so you have sort of like a full kind of video experience, but they're still talking to you as if you're there. So when they're saying, hey everybody, we're gonna do this dance next, it's almost like they're in the room with you. And then they come on afterwards to do like a talk back, which is live with the group. So we tried to find ways to be creative that we were able to still show the quality of our offerings, but also still have that like that very close interactive engagement. So those are kind of things that we were exploring already. And just trying to be very deliberate in terms of the marketing we're putting out there, highlighting certain important days or seasons or months. Trying to push, like, let's say we had one artistic discipline that wasn't getting booked as much, we would try to do like a push for that. We tried to do social media posts every day for engaging and got people talking. We wanted to explore advertising, but we weren't quite sure the right route to go about that. So, so in terms of working with Working Culture and Sue and having this whole workshop experience, I think for me, although I have had many years experience in marketing and communications, I feel there's always a lot to learn because things change every year. And sometimes you can get kind of stuck in the things that you're used to doing and the things that I know I'm good at and I don't explore much else. So these workshops, I think, really helped me to see what else is out there and to be more confident in my choices and to, come up with new ideas for social media or different ways to advertise and to see what's worth spending money on and what's not. So I think that really helped me. And I never actually studied communications or marketing university, so I never necessarily had that background. I was always just sort of doing things my own way as a very independent person. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm working with a larger team, I felt it was important to, have that kind of background and knowledge from my peers to really build into a marketing plan for the organization. And beyond that, this past year, we decided to build a new website. So the previous MASC website was very difficult to work with. It was very limited and very plain, I guess, and very small text. Like you couldn't change things, right? It's very, very hard to work with. And so we knew it was the right time to get a new website. And so one of my big projects with Working Culture was to design and develop this website with a design company. So we worked with them over this past summer of 2021, all the way up until February 2022, which is when we launched the website officially. And we managed to create like a really sophisticated filtering system. So if you're searching for a particular artist or a particular kind of artist or a particular kind of program, you can do that by looking up keywords or choosing filters, which is something we never had before, but I think is really good for engaging with the people who want to book with us. And I think what was really helpful in Sue's workshops was talking about who your audience is. And we know our audience. We know that they're mostly teachers or community organizers, but with the workshops that helped me sort of think a little bit more beyond that, to what those people want and who they are, and sort of a bit more detail about them, to be able to really choose those filters carefully based on what their needs are. Because we wanted to make it helpful, not just like a cool trick that you could use when you go to the website. So, I know a big thing in schools right now is that the majority of teachers are young white women or older white women. And a lot of them are aware of this, and they're aware that that they don't represent all the kids in their class, and that in bringing in guest speakers and artists, they have an opportunity to bring in people who represent other aspects of the kids that they're teaching, which means that they might want to have a Black male artist or an Indigenous artist or somebody with a disability or somebody who comes from a different country. And they can do that by looking through our filters and finding that kind of person. So it might seem a bit limiting to put labels on people that way, but the more we talked to the people that we work with, the more we saw that as a necessity and also a benefit for the artists we work with, because they were able to be booked, for their artistic offerings, but also for who they are as people. And that was, I think, a good thing to realize. It was a bit of a hill for us to climb, because again, we didn't want to be labeling people anyway, but we also wanted to try to get people booked, and to serve the people that and to help the people that we're serving.
That's great. Yeah. So you said that, you got a lot out of the program, and especially related to, learning a little bit more about your audience. Are there any other marketing strategy takeaways that you got from the program that you would, try to tell or other organizations to consider if they're going through similar challenges?
Yeah, I think a big thing that I took away was making use of the people that you have on your team. So whether that's staff members or board members or volunteers or supporters, make sure you get those quotes from people who love your work. Make sure you get people on staff to be retweeting and liking your posts. Make sure you have the teachers you work with or community members you work with sharing the materials if you have any public events that you want to get out there. Just ask them directly, and that's sort of the best way of getting what you want. Sometimes you just put things out into the ether and you don't really think about who's receiving them and where they're going, but there are ways to be more deliberate about that. And also, with your mailing list, think about who you're targeting, what they want to receive, dividing up your groups, and you send certain things to this group and certain things to this group. And I think, we can get a little bit overwhelmed with the stress of the number of things we have to do, but taking that time to reflect on how you're doing things is incredibly valuable. And that's what I feel that I got out of these workshops, was having time to reflect and not just be go, go, go all the time, which is my usual state.
Yeah, that's great. So it sounds like, you accomplished a lot during the program with the website. Yeah. Is there anything else that you think maybe down the road that you're foreseeing for MASC Online? Is there something spectacular marketing wise that you're looking forward to putting in place?
I would like to further develop the website, in that now we have the structure of it, but it's all about the content that we put on there. And we do have a news section, which is formatted like a blog. So I would love to have guest articles from artists or community people or members of staff, just talking about concepts and different things that sort of address arts education or community arts. So I would like that to be more of an interactive space. I would also like to work more on our social media offerings. I know that, we have good quality content that we put out there, but sometimes the level of engagement isn't as high as I would like. So I want to sort of look into ways of developing that. We also have a bit of a difficulty with our mailing list because we have quite a large list of contacts, but some of them are outdated and our database is a bit tricky to work with. So we're actually looking into getting a new database system so we can directly send messaging to people that way. Because at the moment I find a lot of things are just getting lost or going to spam, and just like frustrating things like that I want to smooth out in the next year or so that I know that our marketing materials are reaching the right people and are having an effect.
That's great. Well, I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing how things progress.
Great, thank you.
So thank you so much, Jessica. It's been a pleasure learning more about your organization and what you've been up to.
Great.